Welcome to Business First Africa, where we always make sure the business comes first. Today we're going to be talking about Namibia's gold reserve strategy, South Africa's positioning with regards to its minerals, and of course the biggest topic with regards to anything economical right now, the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and we're going to be zoning in on the response of several Southern African nations. My name is Ashwin Bedi. This is Business First Africa. The Bank of Namibia will soon acquire high-quality gold bullion, and this is from local mines, including Navahab Gold Mine and B2 Gold. And this is in order to strengthen national reserves. Governor Epson Wanguta announced this in Windhoek during the Bank of Namibia's 2025 annual report presentation. The gold will form part of Namibia's official reserves, providing a buffer against economic shocks and currency volatility. It is expected to make up around 3% of net foreign exchange reserves, in line with global central banking practices. The move also supports domestic mining while reducing reliance on imported gold. By sourcing locally, Namibia retains more value within its economy and strengthens financial resilience. Now, this video was captured by Network Media Hub journalist Philippas Joseph.
Has come down quite significantly in 2025 compared to 2024. There has been a huge outflow as well in terms of rand reserves out of the country. And then thirdly, we have seen also the Eurobond redemption. Now, in that regard, interest rate income that was realized by the bank came down from 1.2 billion that was realized in 2024 to 963 million in 2025. So when your interest income is down, obviously it will affect your bottom line. Operating expenses, I must emphasize, there are a number of initiatives that we have undertaken. We are running instant payment. There are also other activities that we are doing. And we are doing all this in promoting the financial sector development and also ensuring that the mandate for which we have been created are not left unattended. I always emphasize at the central bank, we are not a profit-making entity. First and foremost, we need to deliver on our mandate. And realizing the profit is a bonus. That's why the operating expenses there clearly has slightly gone up by 15% from 741 million in 2024 to 849 million in 2025. That now leaves us with a distributable amount dropping for the year 2025 from 1.1 billion to 553. And what we are distributing in terms of the formula to the state, which is of interest to the public, is a 200 million that we have given to the state.
Now, the Bank of Namibia's distributable profits declined significantly, and this was in 2025, falling from 1.1 billion Namibian dollars in 2024 to 553 million Namibian dollars, with 200 million transferred to the state. Governor Epson Wanguta revealed this week, and interest income dropped from 1.2 billion Namibian dollars to 963 million, while operating expense rose 15% to 849 million Namibian dollars. The increase in costs was driven by initiatives such as instant payments and broader financial sector development programs. The figures reflect growing investment in financial infrastructure, even as earnings come under pressure. And the following footage was also captured by Philippas Joseph.
With one of the mine, the Navahab mine, we are also going to proceed to sign another agreement as well with B2 Gold. Soon, we will be acquiring gold bars. Together with the Ministry of Finance, last year, we have redeemed the Eurobond. That was done successfully. We need to point on that because a number of countries that have gone through this international capital market, they fail to honor that obligation. And as a country, we should proud ourselves that we have done that successfully. We also managed to host an Alliance for Financial Institution Global Policy Forum that hosted almost about 900 people in the town of Swakopmund. That event was very successful.
Now, South Africa is emerging as a potential global hub, and this is for critical minerals processing, according to Glenn Nwalia of the University of Witwatersrand. Speaking to Sputnik Africa, he highlighted the country's use of advanced mining technologies, including light communication systems, portable sensors, and non-explosive blasting methods. These innovations are improving safety, efficiency, and access to mineral deposits. With over 80% of the world's platinum group metals and other key resources, South Africa holds a strategic advantage. The combination of resource wealth and technological advancement positions the country as a major player in the global minerals value chain. Here is Glenn Nwalia of VIT.
We have seen in the last 15 years, and especially in the last 10 years, the introduction of trackless mobile machinery, and of course the introduction of integrated remote operating centers. And these are enablers for digitalization of our mines. And I'll give you a few examples as a demonstration. The first one is South Deep Gold Mine, which is here in Johannesburg, one of the ultra deep gold mines where they have a remote operating center on surface that enable both abled and differently abled bodies to actually work in the mine because they are controlling heavy equipment from surface. South African mines are harsh, very variable environments, sometimes even ultra deep. Secondly, is the issue of power, to say that if you are going to be operating a mine as deep as more than 2 kilometers below ground, and sometimes going to almost 4 kilometers below ground, it simply means that you also need connectivity that is reliable in terms of energy, but also in terms of telecoms. In some of the coal mines, you will hardly see a person. All the people are actually focusing on autonomous guided decision making in the boardrooms and also in the control rooms. So much of our coal mines are also highly mechanized, and that also comes with the aspects of minimizing safety or health and safety issues, also improving the performance when it comes to production itself. But that also have many other benefits from it, because our industry at the moment employs plus or minus 20% of women. And this you didn't find in the past, and technology is actually aiding to ensure that we access places that traditionally will not be easy to mine.
About 20% of the world's oil supply is channeled through the Strait of Hormuz, and it is currently closed. And this is how African nations are responding. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana of South Africa announced a temporary R3 per litre reduction in the fuel levy for both petrol and diesel, effective through April until 5 May. The move aims to cushion consumers and stabilize fuel costs amid regional pressure linked to global oil volatility. Countries like Namibia are also experiencing supply disruptions and price hikes, and we're going to be talking about that in the show. However, by reducing the levy, the government absorbs part of the cost shock, offering short-term relief to households and businesses facing rising transport and energy expenses. However, the measure is temporary and reflects ongoing concerns around global supply chains, including the tensions affecting key routes such as the Strait of Hormuz. Here is South Africa's Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana.
Say in the statement, we have decided for now to reduce the fuel levy by R3, both petrol and diesel, for the month of April up to the 5th of May. In between, mind you, I don't know where I'm going to find this money. Mind you, I don't even know where I'm going to find this money for now. In between, I must be working within the budget and say, how do I restructure in such a manner that I can be able to fund this thing. April alone is going to be 6 billion revenue loss. April alone is going to be 6 billion revenue loss. So at the end of April, today we've gazetted what I'm talking about. That's why we had to issue a statement now and to provide clarity for the industry. To provide clarity for the industry. So at the end of the month, in between now and the end of the month, we're going to be observing what is happening in international developments, what is the likely events. If we've got to provide a similar facility for the next other 2 months, May and June, I don't think we can sustain it beyond June. If we do, we'll probably do it in May and June. But the numbers, even for May and June, we're still going to work those numbers up, depending on how the
Now, we move over to Namibia, where fuel supply manipulation concerns are remaining a subject line with regards to the country following shortages and panic buying observed on 31 March. Motorists rushed to fill up ahead of the April 1 price increase, leading to long queues in areas including Rundu, Kleinwindhoek, and Ongwediva. In some cases, only a few service stations still had fuel during peak demand. The Ministry of Industrialization, Mines and Energy has since warned fuel wholesalers against withholding supply in order to exploit higher prices, directing that all stations remain operational and fully stocked. While conditions are stabilizing, pressure persists due to global uncertainty linked to the Strait of Hormuz. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on the situation in Namibia. We do know that the government had announced that there are 3 months worth of fuel in reserves, and we'll be seeing how everything unfolds over time. Now, we swing over to Namibia's beloved neighbor, Zambia, and vice versa. Zambia has zero-rated VAT and suspended excess duty on petrol and diesel for 3 months from 1 April 2026, following a cabinet declaration of a national fuel emergency. Information Minister Cornelius Mwetwa said the decision, approved during a special cabinet meeting chaired by President Hakainde Hichilema, aims to cushion citizens from rising global oil prices. Without intervention, April fuel prices would have been significantly higher, worsening the cost of living. Here is Zambia's Information Minister speaking on the subject on ZNBC.
President of the Republic of Zambia, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, called for the 4th Cabinet Special Meeting today, Tuesday, 31st March 2026 at State House, to deliberate on matters aimed at enhancing national economic and social development for the good of the people of Zambia, and came up with the following resolution. That is to say, zero rating of value-added tax, VAT, suspension of excise duty on petrol and diesel, and the declaration of the current fuel supply situation in the country as an emergency. Cabinet approved that A, zero rating of value-added tax, VAT, and suspension of excise duty on petrol and diesel imports for a period of 3 months, effective 1st April 2026, and B, declaration of the current fuel supply situation as an emergency. These measures are short-term interventions to mitigate the impact of escalating international crude oil prices on Zambia's economy. Cabinet noted with serious concern the continued conflict in the Middle East, which has led to disruption in global oil supply chains, resulting in increased international fuel prices and exerting upward pressure on domestic pump prices. Given that Zambia has not been spared from the impact of the fuel supply disruption, It is important for government to inform its citizens on the happenings regarding the fuel situation and the measures government is taking to cushion household businesses and key productive sectors from the adverse effects of rising fuel costs. In this regard, Cabinet has approved to zero rate value-added tax VAT and suspend excise duty on petrol and diesel for a period of 3 months. The measures take effect from...
Now, much like Namibia, the Zambian government also had to warn people against the hoarding of fuel. But they got to it much earlier. This was around March 17. Here's a report by ZNBC, also featuring the warning from President Hakainde Hichilema.
As uncertainty grows in global oil markets following tensions in the Middle East, Zambia is moving towards shielding its economy through targeted reforms in the fuel sector. Speaking when he met oil marketing companies, OMC's delegates at State House in Lusaka, President Hakainde Hichilema says while global stocks cannot be controlled, inefficiencies in the local supply chain must be urgently addressed.
The issue now with the war around hoarding, let's be specific, cannot be acceptable by anybody. Who is anybody, board of anybody? Is the community of the people of Zambia. Those who live here, do business here. We cannot accept a situation where fuel is there, someone is not making it available because they're hoping tomorrow the price will go up. That is called sabotage. That is called anti-teamwork. And I'm being blunt about it. And I chose to say it before the media leaves. Because that's some of the stories I'm hearing. We can't do things like that, colleagues. If we are partners, we can't do things like that. And we are partners.
He says government will now move to clean up the fuel supply chain, warning that hoarding and speculative practices will not be tolerated under the ongoing reforms.
Now the war is with us. We need to address these issues even more than before. And you know the solutions. You know what is causing this artificial absence of product. But having said that, we also don't want only the filling stations to have fuel. We want the bulk customers to have fuel as well, because they're taking into factories, they're taking into mines. We don't want to drag down our mining production targets. 3 million tons journey of copper per annum, metric tons. This year, we want to achieve 1 million tons, with or without a war. So the bulk customers must continue being served.
The president has also called for private sector participation, encouraging local players to invest in strategic infrastructure.
So the new pipeline project, we like your inputs. We'd love to have your inputs. Because ultimately, this pipeline is just a facility to allow us move fuel, hopefully at a lower cost, into the market. And who uplifts this fuel? It's you. So we want to always get your views, Minister. We have to get the views of these colleagues so that the pipeline's intended objectives are achieved.
And in a shift towards improved sector governance, the president has discouraged reliance on litigation, urging companies to resolve disputes through dialogue.
In this sector, we do not want to see resolution of conflicts or misunderstanding. Let me call them misunderstanding or challenges in court. We want to dialogue. So any one of us contemplating litigation court processes, you are doing the wrong thing. Let us sit and talk. We inherited fuel arrears, $800 million that the previous government lumbered us with. I say us because we're one economy. By the way, all those costs that the government is paying are borne by you because you pay taxes, don't you? So they are borne by us, by you. And we inherited $800 million. close to $1 billion. And one of the operators took us to court, went and seized our assets in Belgium. So we cannot now be filing cases against each other, even amongst yourselves.
At the same function, Energy Minister Makozo Chikote outlined Zambia's strategic fuel stock position.
Alternative sources can only be implemented, Mr. President, if all of us we agree and put our heads together. So this is why, Mr. President, we have seen with our wonderful team from your right, because we have been working as a team.
Meanwhile, National Oil Marketing Association Vice President Pinchi Smukwai acknowledged President Hakainde Hichilema's proactive response to the potential impact of global supply disruptions.
The situation that has arisen is really beyond government's control. And that is why we're here to make sure that we can also put some suggestions, some ideas on how we can work together to try and alleviate this situation.
Hanok Kasama, NBC News in Lusaka.
Now, commuters in Botswana are facing higher public transport fares as operators pass on the impact of rising fuel prices. The increase follows a government-approved fare review triggered by escalating operational costs across the sector. Bus Operators Association Chairman Tiragalo Mponang said the adjustment was unavoidable, citing fuel price hikes as a major strain on operators. The decision comes after a planned strike was called off when authorities agreed to engage with transport stakeholders. New fares will apply to buses, taxis and combis nationwide, with operators warning that further increases may follow if fuel prices continue to rise. Now, this report was delivered by Africa Good Morning correspondent Rorisang Mohojo.
Yeah, when it rains, it pours, Ashwin. It seems things are going from bad to worse here in Botswana, especially for the regular Botswana that is currently struggling to keep up with the rising cost of living. Today, this morning, commuters will be waking up to an increase in public transportation fares as operators pass the impact onto the consumers, the impact of the rising fuel prices onto consumers and commuters. Now, this increase follows a comprehensive review that was undertaken by the government, which was triggered by escalating operational costs across the transport sector. The Botswana Bus Operators Association says that this increase was unavoidable, citing the recent petrol and diesel price hike as a major strain on operators. Now, this fare review comes after a planned strike by the transport operators was called off. If you recall, we reported about this in December when the transport operators had planned to down tools as we were heading into the festive season, citing that operational costs of the transport sector were becoming too much. And so the Ministry of Transport eventually agreed to have a sit down, to have a conversation. And this is when the planned strike was called off. And this is when it was also decided that a review would be undertaken, which essentially and eventually led to this adjustment, which will be effected from today, the 1st of April, as this is the beginning of the financial year of the government. Now, these new fares will apply to buses, taxis, and combis nationwide, and operators are actually warning that further increases might actually occur if fuel prices across the world continue to rise.
Now, we've been going through a lot of statements by governments, but dissenting voices also have been having a say with regards to fuel, particularly in Zimbabwe, where opposition leader Tendai Biti accused Zimbabwe's government of exploiting the global fuel crisis to inflate domestic prices, claiming the country holds around 3 million litres in reserves while implementing increases of up to 60%. He argues that despite adequate supply, authorities are using global tensions affecting oil routes to justify steep price hikes, making Zimbabwe one of the most expensive fuel markets in sub-Saharan Africa. Biti alleges that the pricing structure benefits political and economic elites rather than reflecting genuine shortages. Here is Zimbabwe's opposition leader.
It's a very difficult period in our history, in our country. The working people are suffering. There's a barrage of attacks on the working people of Zimbabwe. The price of fuel has been increased by more than 60% to $2.20 a liter, which has now become the most expensive fuel in sub-Saharan Africa. This is notwithstanding that we had over 3 million liters of fuel already stocked at Feruka and Masasa, so that the recent fuel increases are nothing but speculative, punitive measures against the people of Zimbabwe. We could and should have benefited from the buffer, the reserve buffer of fuel that we already have in the country. So the irony is that countries like Zambia, whose fuel actually passed through Zimbabwe, now have fuel that is considerably less than that of Zimbabwe. As I'm talking to you right now, nurses are on strike because of poor and paltry wages. Teachers have given notice of to go on strike in terms of the Labour Act because of poor salaries. Business people, contractors, they are all crying because the government has declared that all services and products will now be paid in a local currency, yet they sourced their commodities, they sourced their costs in US dollars. So the economy faces a massive slowdown, a period of stagflation, a crisis of underaccumulation, thanks to corruption, thanks to mismanagement. But the ordinary Wananchi, the ordinary citizen, faces a serious clampdown. Since the publication of Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3 of 2026, we have seen a massive clampdown against the citizens of Zimbabwe and closure of all political space. This is despite the fact that Zimbabweans have a right to freedom of expression codified in the Constitution, have a right to freedom of
Well, that's been this episode of Business First Africa. A lot of talk with regards to fuel. We need to be paying attention, especially with what's developing with regards to the Strait of Hormuz. This is not the only sector that will be affected over time. We certainly hope for peace around the world, because ultimately we just want to put business first for Africa. My name is Ashwin Bedi. Don't miss the show next week.